4 years ago, I made a video on my top 5 very best fragrance flankers, but today I'm back with even more flankers that I think are equally worth the praise. Ones that aren't just lazy in marketing because they just take from the visual theme of the previous or OG fragrance. These fragrances actually smell a little like the OG and or also do something equally special in its own right. That's why they are quote unquote great flankers. So if you like some of the fragrances up here already, please stay tuned because you might like the ones that I'm about to mention even more one day. We'll see. Who knows? That, and if you already are a fan of the top 5s or top 10s that I do on this channel, also subscribe if you have yet to. This is free content at the end of the day, and if you want to keep supporting me so that will ensure that I keep doing this for you, the best way you can support me is by, again, subscribing. That and hitting the notification bell if you have yet to, so please do so. But for now, let's get into it. Roll intro, roll video. Now the first flanker we're going to mention today is Amen Pure Malt by Mugler, of course coming from the OG Amen DNA. I think with how it works with the Amen DNA, it would be criminal to leave out Pure Malt just because I think it's so awesome at what it does. The way it just tames that sweet, dark, tar-like, coffee patchouli-esque style from the OG Amen and in place puts that single malt Scotch whiskey on top of it, I just think is really cool. And to be fair, if that is still too intoxicating for you, it's more like the idea of that kind of inspiration on top of this rather than it trying to smell like that verbatim, like a more premium niche kind of boozy fragrance. So I think one of the things that this has really going for it is how sheer wearable it is. Like when I first tried this scent, I didn't think that it was a straight up booze bomb per se. Yeah, sure, you have a fruity accord in the opening that kind of mirrors a slight fruity blast from a malt whiskey if you were to take a whiff of that, but soon you get whisked away into a more grainy approach, kind of simulating that malted barley that you would find again in scotches. I think with how sweet yet dry this part is, it actually works really well with, again, that dark tar-like Amen DNA. There's nothing about this scent that feels like it's quote-unquote too much, so for me, who's not looking to totally scream with my scent, I kind of like that. So I wouldn't describe this as a quote-unquote nightclub fragrance, more like a nighttime fragrance, if that makes any sense. Like maybe you're making a nice dinner in with the bae, or you guys are going out for the night, it's just you two. It's not like you're hitting up the town with the boys. This is that kind of scent. That being said, admittedly, it's still not my favorite flanker out of the bunch. That still goes to Pure Havane, which is probably why I mentioned Pure Havane initially in my initial favorite flankers video. But part of why I still think you should give attention to Pure Malt is that there's still not a whole lot of, again, boozy-ish DNAs out there, especially on the designer level right now. So if you've yet to check it out, please do so. It's one of the great heralded Amen flankers. It's Amen Pure Malt for the win. Now the next fragrance flanker we're talking about now is Black Orchid Parfum by Tom Ford. Now finally, one of the most polarizing fragrances in modern day perfumery finally gets a shot at another fragrance flanker, you know, after its eau de toilette concentration. If anything, quite a few people think that that concentration wasn't so successful, and they're kind of right because eventually it got discontinued, of course. But this time, Black Orchid is better than ever in this new, more concentrated, supposedly Parfum version. It's even pricier too, so I think it has some big shoes to fill. But to a certain extent, I do think it filled those shoes because this is a without a doubt more appealing version of Black Orchid. Feels more unisex in my mind, with emphasis on some of the more deeper, richer notes, rather than make it feel more womanly with the orchid and or the rosier notes from the previous eau de parfum. So to accentuate the richer notes, something like the plum, for example, that darker, juicy, fruity kind of opening really feels like it's coming alive off of my skin. And again, that sort of goes well with creamier notes like ylang-ylang, which is like a banana-like yellow floral. Mix in some truffle and patch, some earthiness right there, and then a little bit of booziness from the rum, and boom, you have an arguably more intoxicating approach to Black Orchid. Like, it's certainly going to feel quote-unquote less perfumey when it comes to like maybe the florals being a little bit too pungent, but still going to feel like a voluptuous, almost femme fatale kind of scent. But again, one that the bravest of guys I feel like will be still a little bit more comfortable wearing, you know, instead of that eau de parfum. So to all you daring fragrance fans out there, if you still want to have a little bit of an edge, but something that's a little bit more tame, not in performance but in experimentation rather, then definitely check this this stuff out. If anything, I genuinely like how Estee Lauder and Tom Ford kind of listen to the public. They see a lot of dudes are out here rocking the Eau de Parfum version of Black Orchid, so why not make a more unisex one as far as the marketing and as far as the scent goes, and hopefully people like it, and I think they do, and I think you will too if you're remotely interested. So definitely a worthy flanker in the grand scheme of things. It is Black Orchid Parfum by Tom Ford. Now moving on to the next flanker we're talking about today, and that is Terre d'Hermès Eau Très Fraîche by Hermès, of course. And now while some would argue that the initial Eau de Toilette Terre d'Hermès is somewhat polarizing, I do only think that that is for anyone who's actually wearing it rather, just because the sharpness of that flint and or mineral quality just feels like a little bit too much in your own personal scent space. But I guarantee you, anyone that's ever caught a whiff off of Terre d'Hermès Eau de Toilette from my scent bubble typically really likes it. No one ever says I'm wearing too much or that's too strong. In fact, they more often than not ask me what it is. So if you do think you can actually handle the initial DNA and you're just apprehensive of feedback, then don't be, just because I think the feedback is going to be pretty good for you. But if you do feel like that stuff is too thick for maybe where you live or what you want to use a supposed scent for, then maybe take a look at this, in my opinion, more pleasant version of Terre d'Hermès in Terre d'Hermès Eau Très Fraîche. So right away, in my opinion, when you do catch a whiff of this, the first thing I'm going to notice that it feels a lot less quote-unquote orangey in comparison to the Eau de Toilette, which I kind of miss. Here it's a more straight up sharp grapefruit, which typically establishes really cleanliness driven kind of vibe, and trust me, you get that here, because anything remotely mineral like, anything remotely soily or too sharp in a masculine woody way in the OG, you're definitely not going to get here. So the vetiver here just smells a lot more clean and less rooty, if that makes any sense. Still very much masculine, but again, just not as quote unquote rugged. So in my opinion, it's perfect for work, especially if you are more of a blue collar guy and you have to get your hands dirty and you don't want to shout as much with your scent and you just want to stay and feel clean. This is definitely one of those scents that I would definitely recommend to you. But it's also an Hermès after all, so there's this classic quote-unquote gentleman-like quality about it too, so it feels smart casual at the same time. But I think that's what's really cool about this fragrance line altogether, is that again, whether you are blue or white collar, I feel like it's for everyone, any kind of the scents in there. But to me, if anything, this is still my favorite of the flankers, and that's why it's on the list. So check it out if it fits any of your criteria. Again, it's Terre d'Hermès Eau Très Fraîche by Hermès. But now it's time to move on to the next flanker. This one is Higher Energy by Christian Dior. And if I can describe Higher Energy in one word, it would be invigorating. Like, this shit just puts you in a good mood, which I don't feel like is the case with other more conventional office scents as of late, or even ones of yesteryear. So the grapefruit here treads the line of a more modern kind of juicy, sweet kind of grapefruit that you'd find in more, again, recent scents. But there's also a tartness at the end of it that kind of reminds you of a more retro style, which makes sense because again, this scent is almost 2 decades old. I personally dig that. You might not, because the scent is older than you, depending on who you are watching this video. But yeah, nonetheless, I still think you should give it a shot. Once you get into the dry down especially, you get that in the air. I think it's a nice compliment magnet, at least in my personal experience. That aromatic, fresh, spicy dry down is just undeniable. Gives you this elevated alpine-like vibe, which is reminiscent of the original, and I guess makes sense in this scent because it's called Higher Energy after all. But yeah, I'm just saying, you put this kind of scent on and it still feels like a work scent, but one that you're just gonna smile at. Like, how can you go wrong? You're definitely going to have a great day at the office. So it's definitely a great flanker from an unfairly overlooked line in Higher over at Dior. And part of the reason to why it feels unfairly overlooked is because of the fact that the Higher line was unfortunately discontinued in North America. So if you're like me and live in North America, you can only get it on the gray market here, which is a little bit problematic because for the most part it is going for higher than retail here sometimes too. But once things open up, my North American brethren, whoever's watching, I encourage you to try this to whatever continent you might be traveling to in the near future. God knows I want to travel once this is all said and done. So yeah, just don't forget about this one, because sometimes fragrance is about discovery too, Again, even discovering things that no longer exist in this area anymore. Once more, it's a great higher energy by Christian Dior. But now we're finally at the end of the list. We're gonna cap it off with a big one here, and I'm pretty sure I cannot do any flanker list nowadays without mentioning everyone's favorite flanker from everyone's favorite line seemingly, and that is Spicebomb Extreme, of course, from the Spicebomb line from Viktor&Rolf. And if I can only have 2 words to describe this scent overall, I would say it's a cinnamon bomb. Just straight up ground cinnamon kind of vibe, and if you are into that warmth, which again I think a lot of people are, I think you'll definitely get down with this scent. Definitely a compliment getter once people are getting that in the air. It's just really good. I know if you were to take a look at the note breakdown too, you see cumin there. Might be apprehensive of that note because it smells a little sweaty, maybe even like body odor, but trust me, you're not going to get that vibe here. Whatever you're using this for, as far as your night out occasions, you're just going to radiate in, again, a warm, cozy way rather than a sweaty body odor like kind of way. So after that blast of cinnamon with maybe a bit of pimento for a kick, that dry down starts to kick in with the vanilla and tobacco, just very smooth stuff. And if you're in close quarters with a loved one, again, I just think that they are going to love it. And sure, it's kind of explosive off of your skin, but I don't feel like it's too sickly or intense. And it's definitely not extreme. I know that's in the name, but there's nothing extreme about this scent in my mind. And dare I say, it more so reminds me of a classier version of Spicebomb, if anything. Like the vanilla here doesn't go gourmand in like an overly syrupy way off of my skin, which of course might be the case in other quote-unquote clubby kind of fragrances. To me, this is not that. It's a little bit more dressed up. So if you're a young man and you feel like you're a little apprehensive of that for whatever reason, I wouldn't be. There ain't nothing wrong with a little bit more of a put-together scent. Trust me. Your girl's gonna thank you later for going in a cozier, warm, more sensual direction. That's if you have a girl, fingers crossed you do. Because you know, scent's not really going to change an unimpressive or shitty personality. Not saying I'm an upstanding individual myself, but I certainly try. And again, I'll try with something like this. Once more, it is Spicebomb Extreme by Viktor&Rolf. But there you go, forum. I think that about does for me as far as my top 5 favorite flankers. Is there anything I missed, or is there a favorite flanker that you actually have here on this list? If so, please tell me in the comment section below. That, and if you really enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe as well. And if you really liked the video, also hit the notification bell for more too, so the next time I do a similar video of this style, you'll be the first ones here. And yeah, I think for me that really does it this time around. So until next time, take care for now. Peace out. Bye. My name is Manny. Wear your fragrances.